Every year it's the same thing, a bunch of people saying that games are boring, that there's no innovation, that the magic is gone. But what if I told you that the problem isn't the games? The problem is you. Yep, that's right, you. You who keeps playing the same stuff over and over, never taking a chance on anything new and still complaining. Today, I'm going to prove to you that we're living in the best time to play video games, and that if you think games are dull, maybe it's time to change the way you play. Welcome back to Game Insights. I'm Arthur, and you know that talk about how games were better back in the day? That competition was tougher? That releases were more innovative? And now everything feels repetitive? Well, there's some truth to that, especially when we're talking about big AAA releases. But that doesn't mean games in general are getting worse. For real, we've never had such a variety of games available. The problem is, most people refuse to try something new. You, for instance. When was the last time you played a game that was totally different from what you're used to? Today, I'm going to show you that the gaming world has a lot more to offer than you think, and that you might be stuck in a cycle of games that just don't excite you anymore. Now stop and think, what were the last games you played? If I had to guess, I'd say they all follow a similar pattern. Third-person, realistic graphics, combat you already know by heart. And then, when you play something different, you turn your nose up at it, but you know what the problem with that is? You're making the games repetitive. If you only play the same styles with the same mechanics, of course you're going to get bored. The human brain needs novelty to stay engaged. It's like when you hear a new song and think it's awesome, but after hearing it 50 times, you're over it. By the way, think about this. When was the last time you really tried something outside of your comfort zone? Have you ever given a chance to a strategy game, a roguelike, a point-and-click, or even a psychological horror game that's not a shooter? Let me give you a classic example. Baldur's Gate 3. This game won Game of the Year. And yet, a lot of people have never even touched it. Know why? Because they heard the words turn-based RPG and gave up. But if you're a real gamer, you've probably played a game like that before. Whether it's an old Final Fantasy, a Pokemon, a Digimon world, the problem isn't the game style. It's the bias we build against certain mechanics. I did the same thing. When Baldur's Gate 3 launched, I ignored it because I thought I didn't like that kind of combat. Then one day, I remembered how much I enjoyed a Digimon game on the PS2 called Digimon World Data Squad, which also had turn-based combat. I decided to give it a shot, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Now, here's the paradox. While some people complain that games are all the same, they ignore any game that tries to do something different. When a game with an innovative twist comes out, people resist it like crazy. That happened with Death Stranding, Disco Elysium, Returnal, Hi-Fi Rush, games that break the mold, and because of that, a lot of people don't even give them a chance. The truth is, games have never been so diverse. The problem is, if you don't open up to new experiences, you'll never notice. Okay, I agree with you. AAA games are getting more and more alike. The big companies figured out a formula that sells, and they don't want to risk it. The result? Releases that feel like copies of each other, with no real innovation. Take any recent open-world game, most of them have the same mission structure, recycled gameplay, and the same map filled with icons to clear. You start a new game and already know exactly what to expect. Not to mention microtransactions, battle passes, and games released incomplete just to sell DLC later. Now, does that mean games as a whole are bad? No. It just means that the AAA games have lost a bit of their magic, but the world of gaming goes way beyond them. While the big studios play it safe, indie games and mid-tier titles are delivering truly innovative experiences. But what happens? A lot of people ignore those games because they think only AAA games have quality. Ironically, indies and smaller studios often bring more creative ideas than any big release. I used to be like that. I thought indie games were just simple and boring, until I watched some gameplay of Little Nightmares. The visuals, the atmosphere, the implied story. It grabbed me in a way that few AAA games can nowadays. After that, I started checking out more, and I ended up playing Inside, Limbo, Hollow Knight, Undertale, and I realized how much I was missing by only sticking to the big releases. And it's not just the indies. AA games, mid-budget ones, are also delivering incredible experiences. Look at Remnant 2, A Plague Tale Requiem, Hi-Fi Rush. All of them brought way more creative proposals than most AAA games from last year. And the worst part? When a AAA game actually innovates, a lot of people ignore it or complain because it's not what they expected. That happened with Astro Bot, which won Game of the Year, and yet some people still didn't like it because it looks too kiddie. Or with Death Stranding, which broke the mold and at first was called a delivery simulator. The point is, if you only look at the AAA games, you'll really think that all games are boring, but the gaming world doesn't revolve around them. If the big studios aren't innovating, then the way out is to explore the games that are, and they're out there, just waiting to be discovered. If you've been gaming for a long time, you've probably gone through different phases. Maybe you started with platformers as a kid, then moved on to FPS, RPGs, or open-world games, but there comes a point where it feels like nothing surprises you anymore, right? The question is, have games really lost their charm, or are you stuck in your own gamer bubble? Let me give you an example. A lot of people only play the same types of games. Always the same FPS, always the same action RPGs, always the same open-world games with skill trees and crafting. If you keep repeating the same experience over and over, of course it's going to feel the same. But the problem isn't the games, it's you, for not challenging yourself to try something new. How many times have you looked at a game and thought, "That's not for me"? And how many of those times did you actually try the game before making that judgment? The truth is, we have biases against certain genres without even realizing it. Ever heard of roguelikes? If not, you're missing out on one of the most addictive styles of games, but I bet a lot of people have never played Hades, Dead Cells, or Slay the Spire just because they don't like hard games or don't like procedural games and racing games. I bet if you're not into cars in real life, you've written off any Forza or Gran Turismo without even giving them a chance. I used to think I didn't like racing games either, until I played Forza Horizon and realized the game was way more than just driving around a track. Some people only play single-player games because they don't like competitive, but they've never tried Rocket League, Fall Guys, or even online Minecraft, which are multiplayer experiences way different from the usual. And here's something interesting when a game tries to step outside the norm. It's exactly the people in their gamer bubbles who complain the most. Elden Ring innovated within the Souls-like genre, and some people turned their noses up at it because they didn't want an open world. Death Stranding tried to bring a different experience, and it was called a delivery simulator, before people even understood what the game was really about. The truth is, if you want to get your passion for games back, you need to step out of your comfort zone. There are so many amazing games waiting to be discovered, but if you keep playing only what you already know, you'll never experience anything new. So, here's a challenge pick, a game from a genre you'd normally ignore. It could be an indie, a strategy game, a roguelike, a psychological horror game. Doesn't matter. As long as it's outside of your bubble, play it for at least 10 hours and see what happens. You might discover a new favorite style, or at least realize that games aren't boring. You just needed a little variety. The best game of your life might be on Steam, Game Pass, PS Store, PS Plus, but if you keep ignoring everything outside of your personal taste, you might never find it. Imagine if I never gave Little Nightmares a chance? Or if my brother never bought Fable 3 on Xbox 360? So before you say games are boring, try something new. Who knows, you might find your next passion. Now I gotta ask for your subscription here on the channel. My friend, your subscription is what motivates me to keep making these videos. We're a small, humble channel, just starting out, doing it all on our own. I only have you, so I really need your help to keep improving the content and bringing the best of the gaming world to you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for your help and your subscription, and see you later. Alligator.